do you think it's a rivalry more off the field between fans?
I think it's a rivalry specifically on Twitter. I don't think it's a rivalry between fan bases that, again, don't live on Twitter, right?
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into this week's edition of Mizzou. That's who your podcast from Missouri Athletics here on KC Sports Network. I'm Tucker Franklin, joined as always by Maggie Johnson. Mizzou coming off of a bye week. Maggie, how are you doing?
I think I said this last time we had a bye week. I thoroughly enjoy bye weeks because, first off, I get to watch all of the other games. So that's, I enjoy it. And then at night, I went to the Blues game. So it's just things you don't typically get to do on a Saturday when you're in Columbia all the time, or like I was in Tuscaloosa last weekend. Last weekend. It's kind of all blurs together also.
It does.
So yeah, I really enjoy my bye weeks, and I'm excited because it's a big week. It's literally the week that we have probably most people listening right now have circled on their calendar or, circled on their schedule. I don't know, since 2021, since they came here, knowing we were probably going to play them. So yeah, big week. I'm nervous and excited.
That's a good way to put it. It was a good bye for me as well. I went to Indianapolis to watch Taylor Swift, so I was driving.
I cannot believe I actually have not mentioned that to you yet since I've been talking to you, because I knew so many people that went, but I was so excited for you because
it was big. It was a last minute choice by our part too. We're just like, you know what? F it, we ball type of move. You know what? It was just like, it's the last US stop. Let's just go see it. But it was awesome. It was incredible. The best concert I think I've ever have been to and ever will go to. Like, I don't think it's going to be close.
You don't know if you don't go. Like you cannot even understand it. And you don't even really have to be a huge Taylor Swift fan. You just
appreciate just like the stamina, the performance. Like, she sounds the exact same too. Like, that's also something that's really hard for artists nowadays, to just sound the exact same live as they do in the recordings. That was impressive. The 3.5 hour show, the 45-ish songs that she played, give or take some there. But, I mean, it was production-wise incredible, constant, nonstop. It's crazy to think that, like, a concert that huge, there's 69,000 people in Lucas Oil Stadium. Like, it was so many people there.
I think now people are going to be coming back just to hear about Taylor Swift, and like we should start a Taylor Swift podcast.
Yeah, that's true. I did have a great time, but it was a good way. It was a good way to spend the bye week. It all just kind of worked out with Mizzou being on bye week, and the Chiefs playing on Monday Night Football. Obviously, I do Chiefs stuff as well, so like that all just kind of worked out. Traveling over to Indianapolis, not a far drive really from Kansas City either. Like from St. Louis, not at all, but like no. St. Louis is about the midway point between here and Indianapolis.
It's like 3.5, 4 hours, I think.
Yeah, so it's about perfect. It's an easy day trip, not really day trip, but like easy trips that you can make. No, it was really good. Did enjoy the bye week. It sounds like Eli Drinkwitz enjoyed the bye week as well, as he had his presser, and he said they had a really great time. They had a good bye week. He thought the guys played well, or practiced well, and got some good time off. Obviously, the big news coming out about Brady Cook and his injury. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Obviously, we know that Eli Drinkwitz isn't just going to come out and say it, because college coaches hate telling the truth. They do not want to tell the truth in any circumstance. And I think he directed people to the injury report that's going to come out today, Wednesday, Thursday. They've got like 4 that's going to come out between now and game time. And I'm sure we will see Brady Cook as either doubtful or questionable all the way up until game time, Maggie. But do you think Brady Cook should play this game?
Without knowing the severity, which, here's the thing. I think if it was super severe, like super, super severe, and he's not playing ever again this season, they would just tell people that. I think that's one thing you're not really going to lie about. But I think that it's bad enough that they're keeping pretty quiet on it.
Bad enough he needed a second x-ray.
Yeah, bad enough he needed a second x-ray, which I don't know if that means that like the first one didn't show anything, or if maybe it showed something like minute, and they're like, oh, well, let's check and see. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I couldn't even tell you what the x-rays look like. I've never, knock on wood, broken a bone or anything like that. So I'm just not really aware of like how that process even works. If he thinks he's going to come back this season, which it seems like they do, it's probably not in his best interest to play. And I hate to say that because it's in my mind, I'm almost like, is a hurt Brady Cook better than a healthy Drew Pine or a healthy anybody else we have in the quarterback room? Probably. But even like going out on that field with a high ankle sprain against Alabama, and you could tell he was running a little gingerly. You couldn't really. That's actually what I thought, because I was, I told you I was in Tuscaloosa. I actually thought it was
a re-aggravation.
An ankle thing, until somebody messaged me and they're like, it was his hand.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, great. It had to be his hand. It had to be his throwing hand.
Right.
This is just, we talked about this a little bit. Like, this is the worst possible thing that could have happened to Mizzou. It's whatever in everybody's mind at the beginning of the season. Like, you can lose a wide receiver. Would you want to lose Luther Burden? Of course you wouldn't. Could you have? Yes, probably. Like, you had enough good wide receivers that could come in and play well enough to catch balls from Brady Cook, based on what we saw last year, right? We don't have anybody that is good enough to come in and replace whatever has been going on with Brady Cook. So do I think he should play? No. Do I wish he could play? Of course.
It's tough too, because this is, as you mentioned, Maggie, at the top of the show, like, this is a game that I think Missouri, the state of Missouri, has had circled for a long time, with Oklahoma coming back. Outside of like the Kansas matchup, obviously, I think this is probably another one that Missouri fans are really looking forward to. And I think the team as well. Look, there's a lot of guys on this team, as we will talk about in a little bit with Travis Davidson at KREF. We talk about with him. There's a lot of guys on this team that have Oklahoma ties. And there are some guys on Oklahoma that have some Missouri ties. So there is some natural rivalries there in terms of just like roster composition in terms of that.
And OU's been coming into Missouri for decades and stealing our best players, coming into St. Louis, coming into Kansas City, and taking our best players. So, that kind of flipped a little bit when Luther Burden decided, to change his commitment. But I understand like other the Oklahoma fan base is being like, oh, we beat you so many times. Like, that's not a rivalry. It is still like it just isn't maybe that on-field rivalry, but there's hatred between these fans. You see it every single day on Twitter, every single day.
It's going to be interesting to see how everything plays out. And look, we know that Brady Cook is a guy who's not going to willingly take himself off, right? If he thinks he can play, he's going to play. This is going to be a game that I think that he has great interest in playing. So maybe will he go out there and will he hurt himself again? Probably. That's probably going to be the case, honestly, is what I anticipate to happen. Drinkwitz did say that Drew Pine is the backup quarterback. He is solidly who's going to be in there. I think they tried some stuff with Harold Blood and just didn't work out, to put it kindly, at the quarterback position. There's a lot of different things like going on with Brady's injury. I do think that you made a good point that they would say if he was out for the season, There's no reason for all the injuries that they had, even on the defensive side of the ball, right? For the players who were out for the season, they told you right away. They don't get I don't think, an advantage by not saying Brady Cook is out, right? Like, it doesn't like put them at a disadvantage if they tell them Brady Cook, because Drew Pine and Brady Cook are like practically the same stylistic.
They're comparable at this point. Like, if you're saying 2023 Brady Cook and Drew Pine, we're talking about two different things. Right now, the defenses can prepare the same way, so I don't see the advantage of saying if he's not. I mean, they obviously aren't going to say it until whatever time that final report comes out late on Saturday. But I think that if it was full season, there's no advantage of saying he's going to play.
And it's interesting, too, because Missouri was favored when this opened into Monday. And now Missouri's now a favorite. So it makes you think that I think Drew Pine is going to be the starting quarterback of this team coming in for it.
They have some info that we don't maybe have.
They probably do. And we'll just have to see. Eli Drinkers, I want to read this quote to you. He said on, I believe this was Tuesday. Maybe it was Monday. No.
So today?
It was today. It was today. He said this. My days are all running together, Maggie.
I know.
In terms of Brady Cook, he said, yeah, he's been doing everything in his power to prepare himself to play, and you would expect nothing less from him, or less from him. He said that wrong. Been great energy in the building, been attacking the rehab, been attacking the game plan, so typical Brady Cook preparation and leadership. Obviously, having the bye week does help, but I mean, if he's got a broken hand, that's going to be very tough to play quarterback with a broken hand. You know what I think? Maybe the bye week has given them some time. This might be some tinfoil hat conspiracy from me here, but like to put more packages in for special types of, Luther Burden or Theo Weiss in the backfield to get those guys the ball more. If your quarterback's hurt and Drew Pine has not been able to deliver the best of balls to those guys, I think that maybe the bye week gives them an opportunity to add some more wrinkles to this offense so they're not going down without a fight, if that makes sense.
And it gives them more time to study what Oklahoma's defense has been doing. He's not, I don't know if Drew Pine was preparing to go into that game in Tuscaloosa. I'm sure, preparing as he practices, but like as mentally prepared to go in. Mm-hmm. And I think having this bye week gave him a full 2 weeks to really prepare. I mean, that could be it is a great thing, but that could hopefully maybe see some changes in what's going on too. Maybe like less scared because you're coming into your own environment against this team. I don't know. I am nervous. And I was less nervous going into Alabama and we lost 34-0.
Yeah.
Great. I know quarterback got hurt.
Yeah, I don't feel as good as I did once about this game. Oklahoma's defense is good. We'll talk about that here in a little bit with Travis Davidson, but signs are not positive for Missouri heading into this game, which is a real shame because it would be great to grab a win over OU in their first year, and an OU down year too, by the way. It would have been great to get a win over them just to have that notch on the belt as they come into the SEC for the first year. But Maggie, let's get into our conversation with Travis Davidson. He's a host on KREF, the home for Sooner fans over there in Oklahoma, down in Norman. But first, before we get there, we're going to take a break and talk about our friends at Home Field Apparel. Maggie's rocking the gray University of Missouri tee.
It's fresh, clean.
Oh, yeah. It's a good-looking print. Do like that one. That one was like the first four out of my pick that I had to come in. Is the first four out of what I had to go pick from. But they got a lot of good styles there at homefieldapparel.com. They got more than just Mizzou. If you got other fans in your life, Christmas coming up, Black Friday, they got some deals coming up. They send a sneak preview out for their Black Friday stuff. They got some new drops. They're based in Indiana, so if you want to support the Hoosiers from their run that they're having, you can go ahead and give them a shouts there. But if you use the code Mizzou24, you can get 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. Love all the support that they give us. Love all the designs that they have at homefieldapparel.com too. They got all kinds of Missouri designs as well. All kinds of designs from the small colleges to the big schools. They got you covered at homefieldapparel.com. We're going to take a break. Then on the other side, we'll be joined by Travis Davidson of KREF. Coming up right after this.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your number one source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Travis, thank you for joining us on today's episode. Appreciate you giving us some OU perspective for this renewed rivalry game as OU travels to Mizzou. How are you doing? How are vibes down in Norman?
Vibes are good. Appreciate you having me on first and foremost. I know when the schedule came out, Maggie and I were texting each other already being like, hey, I want to link up, what are we doing that week? Link up on tailgating, all that kind of stuff. So really excited for the game. The vibes are pretty good right now, mainly because we finally got back into the win column, right? And I think, just getting some some confidence back in the offense, under now Joe John Finley. Seth Luttrell obviously fired a couple weeks ago. Getting some kind of simplifying things, getting back to the basics, if you will, of offense, and it's been good. I know I've been dealing all week with it was just Maine. Like I get it, but we put up some number. We put up the longest receiving touchdown in Owen Field history, which they've played bad teams there before. And we've had Biletnikoff guys, Heisman winners, and this, that, and the other, but at the longest passing touchdown in field history. I think we had the most rushing yards in a regular season game since like 2015 or something like that. Like doing things that, while it was a bad team, like doing things we haven't done in a long time, even against other bad teams. So, you've got your fan base that's already out on this season and saying, hey, you know what, screw it. The standards around here are what they are. So a lot of people are checking out, wanting to fire, the AD and fire the coaches and fire. I think the fans may have fired me. I don't know. I got to check my DMs, but it's, you got the fire everybody crowd for sure. But a lot of people understand there's still a lot to play for. That's the benefit of being in the SEC, right? You have opportunity in front of you, not unlike Big 12 basketball, right? You've got a gauntlet of a schedule, but you can look at that as an opportunity. Like there were times in the Big 12, especially late, where it's like, man, if you lose one or two early, it's like you don't play another ranked team the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And you really don't have an opportunity to impress. Maybe you don't have any primetime games. Maybe you're not doing anything like that. Like that's not something you run into in the SEC, right? I mean, we close, with you guys, Alabama and LSU. So, I mean, like we get the bye before Bama and LSU, but I mean, that's a fun way to finish anything. So we're excited about it, again, relieved from some of the doom and gloom a little bit. The It's Just Maine crowd, they are what they are, but it was nice to just be able to like find joy in beating a bad team. Like it is okay to be happy about beating the crap out of a bad team. Like it's okay. It's okay. We've done that for 100 years with Oklahoma State. So
that's true. I guess you could kind of say like, I mean, Oklahoma holds quite an advantage in the battle between. I think there were 5 ties. We'll just mark those as Mizzou wins. I think we should do that because I think if Mizzou can hold them to a tie, it should just go in our favor that way. So funny story of how I kind of met Travis. We met in like 2021, like summer 2021, and at the time Luther Burden was committed to the University of Oklahoma, and I think there was a little bit of talk about him, and of course I was yapping a little bit. And then, flash forward to August, he decommits and then he commits to Missouri, and kind of a little bit before the NIL thing kind of took off. But since then, and I know Tucker used the word rivalry a little bit ago, and I kind of looked to see what Trump's face would look like because I know that there's a weird thing between Mizzou fans and Oklahoma fans on if it's a rivalry, if it's not a rivalry. On the field, maybe not, but off the field, there's been quite a bit of a rivalry. I kind of want your opinion a little bit on it, Travis. Just, on the recruiting battles, obviously we've had the high school battles with guys like Williams Wanieri. We've had the transfer portal guys with Theo Weiss and Caden Green and JJ Hester and Daniel Parker Jr. So I kind of just want do you think it's a rivalry more off the field between fans?
I think it's a rivalry specifically on Twitter. I don't think it's a rivalry between fan bases that, again, don't live on Twitter, right? I mean, was it Dave Chappelle that said Twitter's not a real place, right? Like, I think sometimes we get in these echo chambers of being like, man, we don't like them. We had a beef with them. I think largely it centers around recruiting because Twitter, is where recruiting lives, right? That's where you get your recruiting news. You don't get it from Facebook or the newspaper or, the nightly news or anything like that. And I think that's what's really been the engine behind the off the field rivalry, if you will, right? Obviously, Williams Wanieri, probably the biggest one. Caden Green thing just kind of piled on it. I at times forget Luther Burden was even ever committed to Oklahoma just because it's been so long ago. Guys commit, decommit is what it is, especially after you go through a coaching change. Like I I completely forgot about that. If you were to ask me if Luther Burden was ever committed to Oklahoma, I would have said, well, of course, yes. But I was surprised whenever you started with that. I was like, oh my God, yeah. That's so
told you I was going to keep you on your toes a little bit.
Right. Taking me way back. But yeah, I don't think, the silent majority, not to be political on election day here, but the silent majority often decides is representative of the reality, right? So like when you go into like when you go in on Saturday and when I'm talking to people and saying, hey, you guys going to Mizzou? You going to Mizzou? And they're like, no, we've been there, we'd rather go to some other places. And like Maggie and I were talking about through text, it's like, yeah, a lot of people have been there before, so it's not a new experience for them. But I do think when you kind of rank the rivals, if you will, I don't think Mizzou probably makes the top 5. I would say, even teams like Notre Dame and, Nebraska, historic rivalry type situations. I bet some people, depending on what age you are, would consider Miami more of a rival than Mizzou, right? Because of the Switzer and Jimmy Johnson days and everything like that. So when you look at historical rivals of who we were competing, for championships against annually and national championships, obviously with Nebraska and with Miami, and then you go with the Texases and the regional one with Oklahoma State and things like that. Like I think the A&Ms, the Missouris, more the recruiting rivals. I think that's where it mostly lives is on the internet. And I think as Maggie and I spoke about as well, when you look at the ticket prices on the actual in the mailers going out to OU fans saying, hey, this is how much each away game is going to cost. Like the Missouri tickets were the cheapest. Now, again, maybe they just thought the demand was a lot of people have been there, so maybe, we can't get as much out of it. But just looking at the official, athletic department mailer that said, hey, LSU is going to cost this much, at Ole Miss is going to cost this much. So I don't know. I think the Twitter poll would look a lot different than if you went person to person in the stadium.
That's probably for a lot of things, right? In this country, so you could probably say that for a lot of different things.
Exactly.
I do think it's very interesting. Last time these two teams met, I believe, was 2011, and the college football has changed drastically since then. And I do think that there is a little bit of, as you mentioned, the recruiting rivalry, the transfer portal rivalry. I'll say it in air quotes here, of stuff that does add to the matchup. I will say adds a little bit of juice, maybe more to a team that Missouri used to play every year and stuff like that. So I think the fact that having that ignite again is very good, I think, for the conference and for both of these schools in particular. And this game is interesting too because, as you mentioned, Sooners with the interim OC, they fired their OC 7 games into a 3-year contract, I believe it was. Thoughts on that move? Just do you think it was the right move in the sense in where it needed to be? And I mean, there's a whole different conversation we can have about like the quarterback decision making and everything they've done there. But just on offensive coordinator, do you think that was the right move to move on as early as they did?
Yeah, I think optically you had to. I think that, the offense was one of the worst in Oklahoma history. Now, I do think there are a lot of reasons for that. I don't think necessarily it's that, Seth Luttrell forgot how to coach offense. He coached prolific offenses at North Carolina and Indiana and Arizona. His offenses were good at North Texas as well. But I do think I think the issue for me wasn't necessarily just the hire, but it was the implementation of the hire. That was the problem for me. It was, rumors that the, incumbent quarterback wanted one particular offensive scheme style ran that he had been running since high school because Levy had been recruiting him since high school. And he had, even when he was at Ole Miss, before he even got to OU, he had been recruiting him. So that was what he was comfortable with. Whereas the offensive coordinator was like, well, I kind of want to run my offense because I'm the one that's in charge. And it's all hindsight's 2020, right? Because, people that do not like Seth will say, oh, he's getting pushed around by a teenager telling him what offense to run. That's when I knew he should have been gone. But if you look at it the other way and say, what if upon the hiring, say, quarterback says, hey, I want to run a different offense, or I'm going to go find somebody that's running more of like a veer and shoot style RPO. Like, and if Seth holds his ground, and the quarterback transfers, then everybody's saying, you ran off our big time quarterback, blah, blah, blah. Like it's a no-win situation, right? The only win in that situation is that you call what the quarterback wants, and then the quarterback plays really well, and everybody, it's all sunshine and rainbows. The problem is, obviously, Jackson did not play well to start the season, and honestly, to me, it came down to the health of the wide receiver room and the health of the offensive line. I mean, we are down our top 5, at least on the depth chart. Top 5 wide receivers have been for the majority of the year. We were down 3 of them to start the year, and then one of them broke his foot on his first catch of the year. So on a 47-yard catch. So like Deion Burks has been out since Tennessee. Like, so and then onto the offensive line, obviously we bring in Portal, right? Because Andrew Rame, goes off, goes into the draft process. You've got Walter Rouse, the left tackle, who gets drafted as part of the Vikings now, of course. And then the right tackle who goes in the first round, right? That was after you replaced both tackles from the year before because they both went to the NFL and another tackle went in the first round, right? So you've kind of got this, okay, you've got to replace the spots, so you're already going to have new players. And then obviously the Caden Green transfer, and then at right guard, Matauer ran out of eligibility. So you don't return any starters. And then, so you're like, okay, the offensive line's got to come together quick, right? Well, the problem is 4 of the starters on opening week are all gone. Like, none of them are playing. So our starting right tackle, Jake Taylor, he's not playing. Our starting left tackle, Jake Sexton, I don't think he's playing, right? Like, our starting center that was supposed to come in, Branson Higman, he's not playing. Like, our left tackle or our left guard, like Garrett Hatchett from Washington, he's not playing, right? All these injuries stacked up, and you can't do much with it. I mean, we're playing multiple freshmen along the offensive line that haven't had much time to develop at all, and they're having to go up against Ole Miss's defensive line, Tennessee's edges, Texas's edges, South Carolina's edges. Like, it's tough. So, with that, you can't have both on an offense. You can't have a battered offensive line and an inexperienced wide receiver room, because it almost goes back to the old Joe Burrow meme when they were talking about drafting Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell. I think all football fans remember that one. It was like if you have good offensive line play, inexperienced wide receivers have time to get open, and you're going to be fine. If you have talented, experienced wide receivers, they don't need as much time to get open, so you can have mediocre offensive line play. If both of those things are bad, if you need more time to get the receivers open and you have less time to throw, it's all bad. So that kind of, it caused the change in quarterbacks. You needed a guy kind of to provide a spark. He did immediately. That win at Auburn kept us out of the cellar for a little while at least, which has been nice. But
we'll keep Auburn down there.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was a tough situation for Seth because I don't think he ever got an actual chance to run his offense. But I also think probably he had been a head coach for a long time and kind of maybe lost sight of, hey, this is how the install's got to work. This is all because he hadn't done it in almost a decade. So it's unfortunate for Seth. I know he's taking it fine. He's a national champion here. He's his Oklahoma legacy will be just fine. But it is nice to kind of have a fresh lease on offense, and now we can start our OC search sooner rather than later, and I know that's going on currently.
You guys like to hire a lot from inside, don't you? You like to kind of bring a lot of those people.
Kind of. So the Luttrell thing made it seem like it was, hey, we just want to promote from within. I think there's a balance of two things. I think one, in a world of transfer portal and NIL, stability is almost nowhere you look. And I think that if you can have stability and at least say, hey, man, the guy that's recruiting you is going to be the one coaching you. Not only is he going to be coaching you when you get here, he's going to be coaching you the whole time. And he knows the way around here. He's got roots here, things like that. I think there's something to that strategically to try and insulate your program with a bit of stability and at least come across as the, as the sturdy foundation that you can hold on to in the storm. But I also think it's been been a bit of a situation where we've been a good program for a really long time. So we've had players that go on to be good coaches. Like I asked somebody the other day, like, man, I'm sick of hired from within. I'm like, okay. Last year, I would say, would you take Michigan's offensive line coach? Because that guy, Sharon Moore, is a monster, right? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, he played at OU. They're like, oh, man. And then this year, it's like, man, LSU's offensive line hadn't given up like any sacks through 7 weeks. Would you take their offensive line coach? They're like, hell yeah. I'm like, okay, well, he played at OU. Like, it's you at a certain point, I think it's a situation where familiarity is nice. I don't think it's necessarily a situation of, hey, we can only hire people that played or coached at OU. I think it's more of a situation where it's not going to eliminate them. It may give them a little bit of a feather in their hat. You know what I mean? It might be the little plus on your resume or something. But like, look at DeMarco Murray, for example. Like, DeMarco Murray is going to stick around OU longer than, let's say, I don't know, another running back coach might. We'll just say that, because he has deep ties, to the program, right? So you get a bit of that loyalty in return to bringing in a guy that A, knows the standards, B, very talented, just landed the number 1 running back in the country last year. Ever since he got here in 2020, we haven't had a single leading, like our total yardage leader for the year. Nobody has averaged under 6.2 yards a carry for the season. So like he's putting dudes in the draft. He's been, productive as a coach, and he can recruit, right? So I know Lincoln Riley tried to hire him away and make him the highest paid running back coach in college football, and he said no. Like, and he's a Vegas guy. He's he would be great in LA. I mean, he's got other business ventures. DeMarco Murray was like on the cover of GQ like the week that offer went out. Like the dude's big time, no doubt. Like he's quote unquote bigger than Norman, Oklahoma, right? As people would say, right? But that's the thing. You get the loyalty in the long run from guys like that. So I don't think there's necessarily a lot of downside. You like some familiarity. People in that region, you like to recruit. You like to bring in people that know how to recruit the region.
Yeah.
Well, the people that are from that region often have ties to Oklahoma, right? Especially from like the Dallas Metro and things like that. Like, you end up with just a lot of ties to the University of Oklahoma, because when you win as long as they've been winning, everything, it's like, Seth Luttrell, oh, okay, former national championship, player in 2000. And he's not even of the, I don't know, top 50 guys that people will be like, oh, Oklahoma ties right there. Boom. It's not that any national championship here. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It is what it is. Like, you look at like a guy like Malcolm Kelly. Everybody's like, man, we got to go get Malcolm Kelly. I'm like, yeah, I'm a big fan of the rap. He's a awesome. I mean, he is a great wide receiver coach at TCU, and I would love to have him here. But it would just be a good hire regardless of whether he was an OU player or not. You know what I mean? So I think you can build a lot of good staffs based on people who have played or coached at OU.
I like the loyalty aspect of it. Missouri's tried to do this a couple of times. We tried to, we did it with Kim Anderson with basketball. We did it with Barry Odom with football.
Barry Odom, yeah.
Yeah. The problem that Missouri has is that we don't have that history like OU has. So it is hard to hold those coaches whenever something better comes along. Now, obviously, Barry Odom and Kim Anderson, neither of them worked out because they just probably weren't the right hires at the right time. But I'm kind of at that point with my coaching, my coaching staff. So I'm kind of like, well, I want us to be really good, but I don't want us to be so good that, Alabama wants Kirby Moore or, something like that. And obviously this year, the offense has not looked great. He's probably still going to be on a lot of people's boards. But no, I kind of understand what you're saying with all that. We're just on that opposite end of.
Well, I mean, look at Nebraska, right? Like, Nebraska brought in Scott Frost, and they thought, prodigal son, here we go, it's going to work. And part of the issue is of people in coaching. Nebraska doesn't have a lot of like prodigal sons that can return anymore. You know what I mean? Like, You're running out of it. Like, you can't hire just because of that tie. And granted, he did big things at UCF and whatnot, but it's like when you don't have the history like say at Oklahoma does, like it's twofold. You end up hiring a guy because of the ties, and your pool is so much more limited, and then it's tough to keep him because like I don't know if it's a pay thing, or I don't know if it's a trophy case thing, a leadership thing with the AD. I don't know what it is, but I do know that Ohio State came after DeMarco Murray heavy in the offseason. Todd Bates was pursued by multiple high-level SEC schools in the offseason. That didn't go anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like OU's ability to retain, I think, also does go back to that like loyalty and tightness that Brent Venables has instilled in his staff. Like, hey, look, we're going to take good care of you here. And a lot of people, they're like, hey, man, I want to win as a coach. I won here as a player. I want to instill that mindset, instill that standard in that, because once you lose the standard, like then you're Nebraska. Like then you're coach.
Yeah. It's interesting. We've gone about 22 minutes into this interview and this conversation, and we haven't even talked about the defense of Oklahoma yet. And that's probably the best part of Oklahoma. Is Danny Stutzman was a Buckus semifinalist, who's announced, I believe, later last weekend, however you want to word that, I guess, whenever you're listening to this podcast. Podcasts are weird. It's time travel. Anyway, great defense in Oklahoma. I think they've played very well this year. How do you think they match up with Missouri?
Well, it's tough to say because I don't know. Is Drew Pine starting? Because I feel like we're matching up really well with Drew Pine.
I think my JV team matches up good against Drew Pine. Okay,
but I don't think Brady Cook exactly lights the world on fire offensively, but the offense just runs better with him at the helm. There's no, it's black and white. I mean, there's no comparison, but we've leaned on our run defense the entire year. Really, Texas was the only time we really showed bad tackling in that. I mean, we had sure tacklers, like NFL type guys. Obviously, Billy Bowman was an All-American last year. RSJ's been, I think, PFF rated him the best defensive player through like 7 weeks or something like that. Like you've got like good tacklers on the back end there, linebackers, and they were just sliding down Texas running backs like fireman poles. And that was just something we haven't seen all year. And Brent Venables kind of came under fire in the postgame show or in his postgame presser because they say, what did you think about today? And he said, well, I was really disappointed in the defense and everything. But everybody was pulling their hair out going, this guy's lost the plot. He doesn't know what he I can't believe the offense did what they did. And he said he's got a problem with the defense. Problem is, it's all relative to expectation. Brent Venables expects his defense to tackle well, to be good against the run, right? To create havoc, tackles for loss, things like that. Like, he expected them to do that. He knew what the offense was going into that week. He's in the practices. He knows what's up. But he thought he could rely on the defense to create opportunities for his offense to maybe have it play out like the Auburn game, right? Just hit on some big plays, make something happen there. The defense is going to keep you in it, going to force a turnover or two maybe, and then you're going to be in good shape. So, the defense, again, it's healthy outside of basically Kendall Dolby and Gentry Williams. You get Deshaun McCullough back. You mentioned Danny Stutzman. I think he's third in the SEC in tackles right now. Playing great. And that's what you kind of questioned early in the year. Not questioned Danny, but questioned the want to, the stick-to-itiveness, if you will, of the defensive side of the ball, right? Because if they go into every game going, there's no matter how well we play, we may not win because the offense is just inept, right? And you wonder with guys like Danny, like Billy, like, a guy like Ethan Downs and all these guys that have been part of this program a long time and had opportunities to leave early for the NFL and ended up coming back. Like, you start to think like, man, do they think about shutting it down at any point? Do they start to, take some plays off or ask for the young guys to get rotated in a little bit? And it just really hasn't happened yet. I don't think it will by any means. If it hasn't happened by now, it's not going to. You know what I mean? So, you look at, I think it was South Carolina when Michael Hawkins went in through, 2 interceptions, one being a pick six, and then fumbled on a scoop and score going the other way. That led to Littrell's firing the next week, obviously. But, with that, the defense, the game was over 5 minutes in. And Danny, I think, doubled up the next highest tackler on the team. And I think he had a season high 16 tackles that day. It's like you don't expect, when a defense knows you're completely out of the game 5 minutes in, you don't expect, your leader of your team, the defensive, captain, if you will, the defensive star, to have his best game of the season. You know what I mean? Like, you typically don't. Just human nature says that. So, the defense is good. Corners will be something to watch, obviously, which is, again, goes back to the quarterback situation. Our corners have been exposed at times. Sometimes it's safety rotations, but we've got a young star in Eli Bowen. He's been I think our highest graded corner. It's funny because everybody thought during the Peyton Bowen stuff, the 5-star obviously that put on the Oregon hat and then didn't fill out his paperwork appropriately and slipped to OU on signing day. And he was a long time Notre Dame commit. A lot of people thought that Eli Bowen, his younger brother, was like a pity offer, right? Was like, oh, we're just taking his little brother in hopes that he wants to, that he can bring the big brother along. Mizzou's favorite, Mizzou Twitter's favorite, Parker Thune, actually put in a crystal ball back when he was a 247, now Rivals, but put in either a crystal ball or future cast for Eli Bowen that day that we all knew that Peyton Bowen was about to flip. He's like, watch, I'm going to put it in for the younger brother. And obviously the younger brother's been playing great. There have been people make the jokes that actually Peyton Bowen was the pity offer. We just wanted his younger brother the entire time because he really has been very, very good. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's going to be good here for a long time. On the other side, we're rotating in like Kenai Walker and Des Malone. Jacoby Johnson was a guy that they, were switching to offense. He was a Mustang, big time. He had legit basketball offers, was going to play either wide receiver or corner for us. More often than not, they go where your head coach, your head coach's disciplines are. So it's like, I bet if Lincoln Riley were here, Jacoby Johnson would have been a wide receiver. But Brent Venables is here, so Jacoby Johnson is a corner, right?
Yeah.
So similar with Billy Bowman, right? Like there was a toss-up, a fight over Billy Bowman. Is he going to be a wide receiver? Hayden Bowen, these kind of guys, right? Guys that can play both ways. So moving him around, but he got the start against Maine at quarter. He's a big body. Could see him on like a Theo Weiss situation where he's like, he's a 6'2", 6'3", 210 type of guy. Great speed. Was always great on special teams before he got the nod up in the bump and snaps with us. But yeah, I mean, the backer play, defensive line play has been really, really good. Again, run defense, I think we're 17th in the country in stop rate right now nationally. So, I mean, defense has been good. Just got to, again, create opportunities for an offense that's still kind of trying to find its way.
I just really have one more kind of question for you, and it's just like not related to offense or defense. But so I asked Billy Lucci of Texags this, and I asked Clint Lamb of Cover Crimson the same question. Who do you think has more to gain from winning this game? I know, obviously, OU staying at 5-4 hasn't made their bowl game yet. Like you said, has Alabama at home, and I believe LSU on the road. And how we know that LSU on the road is will probably be a night game because they get every night game that they could possibly want.
Right.
Mizzou 6-2. Neither team making the playoffs at this point. I'm sorry, Mizzou fans, probably just not happening. So, who do you think has more to gain, Oklahoma or Mizzou?
Well, I think it's definitely Oklahoma. I think it's with coming down to signing day, they don't right now have kind of the built-in like you guys do, like, oh, quarterback's been hurt, like nothing we can do about it, right? Oh man, when he gets back, everything will get better, right? Like you can sell that, right? To recruits as we approach signing day in December or early signing day in December, as you approach portal stuff, things like that. Like there are already kids, announcing that they're going to be in the portal, right? That after 4 games said, hey, I'm taking my red shirt, I'll see you there. So like stuff like that, like you always have to be kind of recruiting those guys, right? Unofficially, not, tampering with those guys, right?
Right.
We would never.
Yeah, just talk to my dad. But like with that, I think Oklahoma's got more to gain because, again, got Jackson back. We're starting to play a bunch of freshmen. I mean, even before Maine, we had played a lot of freshmen. So trying to develop that kind of that next level, getting to bowl eligibility, of course, extending that streak that dates back 25 years or something like that. Extending that, making sure that you don't spend your first year in the basement of the SEC. You know what I mean? Because at Ole Miss, I had somebody talking to me, or, this young kid as I was walking over to do post-game radio. He's like, welcome to the SEC. It's a little bit different over here. I'm like, shut up. Like,
we've all heard it. We've all heard
this
it.
team would have been bad in the Big 12 this year with these offensive line issues and the wide receivers, all that. Like, it's not the big bad SEC that came up and grabbed us and pulled us down. Like, and it's always the teams that have never won anything in the SEC that brag about the toughness of the SEC, right? And it's always funny to me that when you run into people like that, oh, welcome to the SEC. Oh, come on now. It isn't the tough schedule of the SEC that's beating us down. It is ourselves. And Texas seems to be doing fine in it. And we've dominated Texas for the last quarter of a century. So it's like it doesn't really, once you start getting into the second and third question of the welcome to the SEC, the argument starts to fall apart. So, but I do think, I don't think Mizzou has as much to lose. I don't know what the fan base's temperature is on Drinkwitz. I imagine it's still high. They're like, you guys are in good shape with him. Hey, you've just got an injured quarterback. All good. I do think that you guys had a schedule that was ripe for the picking. And I'm not sure I don't know, obviously the next year's schedule just flips, but don't know what the prospects are moving forward of, hey, look, what better playoff opportunities are we going to have going forward? What are we going to be? Are people going to poach coaches like you had mentioned? Like, what's the future? So what about from your guys' perspective? Like, I think of you, but I'm not sure. Is that just, I'm just more familiar with our situation and saying, hey, look, we got to get to bowl eligibility, give ourselves some confidence going in. Because I think if we go on the road and win as a favorite now, because the line
saw that it's -3 on DraftKings right before the show,
which is kind of odd, which makes me wonder, did the Brady Cook injury news like update while we didn't know about something or whatever? Because something it was a 6-point swing, so something triggered that. So the money usually doesn't move something 6 points immediately. You know what I mean? So I think if Oklahoma goes and wins, it's the first. I think we didn't expect to be favored in any game on the rest of our schedule. So now back being a favorite, if I kind of would have liked to win as an underdog. It's a better story, and you at least don't have the built-in, hey, we were favored to lose. What are you talking about? So now we'd be technically upset in this game, which wouldn't look good. But with that, bowl eligibility and confidence going in, I think if you win this game, you feel good about going forward and at least maybe clipping one of those teams. Bama hasn't looked like world beaters by any stretch of the imagination. They look a lot like Joel Klatt said, look a lot like 2017 Oklahoma. Got to win in some shootouts. The defense isn't what it was. And then, LSU, they're looking good now, but A&M made them look a little silly. They look beatable. Like, who knows what happens? If you start to build confidence that Oklahoma hasn't had all year, then who knows what happens. But what do you guys think as far as do you guys think you guys need the win more or can handle the loss more easily? What's your guys' temperature on Drinkwitz? Are you guys worried? What big contributors are you losing that you might say, man, we got to make a run with these guys, or it's going to be tough sledding in the future? What are you guys' thoughts?
Meg, you can go ahead.
We lose a lot. I mean, obviously, we're losing Theo. We're losing Luther. We're losing Connor Tolson. We lose a lot. It's weird because I'm at a different place than I was 2 years ago when you look then at your recruiting class and you're like, oh no, like, what are we going to do? Because the transfer portal and NIL has really opened that up for us. I have so much more faith in Drink going and snatching people out of the portal, because I know I was watching actually an OU podcast and they were talking about how our defense has been bad, but our defense actually has not been bad. So I was kind of surprised that he even said that. But they had huge shoes to fill, because we had a really good defense last year, and then everybody was like, the offense is going to be so good this year and the defense might not be that good. Well, it's kind of been flipped. So do I think that if we're not successful this year that we can't be successful in the next few years? Not necessarily. However, I think you want to go into this game as a fan, as a player, and regardless of the injuries. I mean, you talked about it, like no Brady Cook, and then on your side, there's a bunch of other players that are playing too. So it's kind of a little bit like, even like, I don't think both teams are going to use the excuse, well, we didn't have anybody. I mean, I already see it coming. Yeah. So it doesn't even matter. But I think just as like a Mizzou fan, you want to go into this game and you want to win it, and not to be like, yeah, welcome to the SEC, but to be like, this isn't the Big 8 Mizzou. This isn't the Big 12 Mizzou. Even though we might look like it with with Drew Pine playing at quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't even know if we look like Big 8 or Big 12, maybe like 1995 Mizzou.
Yeah.
But I think that Mizzou still wants to go into this game and just prove that if they get those players in the right spots, the same players that Oklahoma is battling with us for, but they choose to come to Mizzou, that you can win these games and that you can compete with the Oklahomas and the Alabamas, even though we didn't compete with Alabama. But you know what I mean? But if you get those players, that you have the ability to do that. So I do think a lot rides on this game for Missouri as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the going to the Drinkwitz side of things, how fans feel about Drinkwitz, he's got to find a quarterback. I think that's going to be the big thing, is that could be, he can recruit really good at every other position. He could get the number one recruit in the country, and when it comes to defensive end, when it comes to wide receiver. But the quarterback position has been one of the spots where he hasn't necessarily found the home run option. And Brady Cook had a great year last year. I think that a lot of that has to do with Cody Schrader, with how well the offensive line meshed. I think there was a lot of stuff right there that went right for Brady Cook, and I think that maybe they thought that they could advance him maybe a little bit more. Maggie and I have talked about this, and did some more big boy passing stuff that maybe he just wasn't quite ready for yet. And I think that what's going to be really big for Drinkwitz is finding a quarterback. Zoller's coming in. Obviously, he's coming off of an injury that he suffered in his high school season. Like, that's going to be huge into extending the leash of Drinkwitz. I think he's fine. I don't think he's in any sort of jeopardy right now. But I do think that's one spot where I think
that's extend him.
What's that?
Didn't y'all just extend him?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he's
been extended a few times.
He has been. Like, I think back-to-back years he was extended. Which is interesting to do. I think it was also both by the Border Regions, which is also an interesting thing to note as well. They were not AD extensions. They were Border Regions.
You brought up the defense, Maggie, about being you lost a lot, had big shoes to fill. I always find it interesting when a group either decides to come back and forego the draft, or a group decides to get out while the getting's good. I compare this, excuse me, Texas's defense last year. So Jalen Ford was first team All Big 12 linebacker, right? He was, draft pick. He played behind the best defensive tackle duo in the country, right? In Tavondre Sweat and Murphy. He was kept clean the entire time, and he could go make plays, right? People weren't getting up to the second level. So you saw certain guys at Texas say, man, those guys made life really easy for us. We need to get out while the getting's good, or else our draft stock's going to hurt. This year, obviously, Texas's strength, while they've got good edge play, is their offensive line, right? They've got 5 stars all over the line. They returned all 5 starters. That's the strength of their team, where their run defense was their strength last year. I found it interesting where, let's see, the 6 draft picks that Missouri had was the most in a while, right?
Yeah.
Was since 2015.
Before that, I'm pretty sure, was it?
So you had 6 go, and it was first rounder, defensive end, defensive back, linebacker, defensive back, right? Like, and some of those guys had decisions to make, right? Do you think that there was a feeling at all that, hey, look, we kind of topped out what we could do at Missouri. Let's get out and let's go to the NFL, or as opposed to, hey, let's go back and we can't really count on a New Year's Six bowl victory, kind of propping us up a little bit. Maybe, hey, let's go get paid now. As a unit, it's just kind of interesting to lose that many as a unit when you know how much they rely on each other to work together. So knowing that after the draft, Maggie, you and I might have talked about this. Did you have any doubts about your defense, knowing that whole position groups theoretically were leaving and some were choosing to leave instead of coming back and running it back? Because from the other perspective, we had guys like, we had basically one offensive lineman like jump that didn't really need to, but everybody else, obviously, Danny Sussman comes back, Billy Bowman comes back. Like, those are the 2 big ones, right? Woody Washington ended up coming back, like, because it felt like, hey man, first year in the SEC, we got something to prove, all that. Like, what are your guys' kind of thoughts on the defensive room, people leaving early? Did they think that was as good as it was going to get at Mizzou? And were they right?
Well, I think there's guys with Ennis Rakestraw, who was injury prone a lot of his time at Mizzou. So I do think that him going, I think he had one more year of eligibility. I think him going was the smartest move that he could have made. We had two of the best corners in the SEC last year. I don't fault either of them for going, because I don't think that they were ever going to improve their draft stock any more than they possibly could have. And then you have guys like Darius Robinson, who's out of eligibility, but he was the heart and soul of our defense. Literally, he wore Mizzou on his back on senior night. He put his school above himself. I don't think there were a lot of players that chose to leave because they thought it was the best that it was ever going to be. I just think that it was the best that they were ever going to be. I don't think there was any reason to stay any longer because nothing was going to get better for them. And at this point, you can make your money in college or you can make your money in the NFL. And I think that they got advice to go make their money in the NFL.
Yeah. And it's when it comes to the defense too, they had a late leaving coach, right, who went to LSU. They brought in Corey Batoon. They had a lot of the transfer portal, I think, was closed, if not almost closed, by the time that he decided to make his leap to LSU. So I think there were a lot of question marks coming into this year about the defense. And look, Maggie and I talked about on this podcast, I think, for the whole year. They were like, I don't know how this defense is going to be, but this offense sure should be good. And it's been the opposite this year. So it's really is just a crapshoot, I guess, when it comes down to it.
That's not new for people in your region, right? I mean, let's see. Kansas City's ranked as a top 3 defense in the NFL. And Mahomes, they about middle of the pack as far as offenses go?
Yeah, it's insane.
But they can't stop winning. So I mean,
well,
as long as you have one of them that's really, one that's really good, I think you can either be in the middle on both, or you can have one that's really stellar and one that's kind of okay.
Oh, for sure. It's just so funny to me because it's everybody assumes the Patrick Mahomes offense. Surely they're number one offense in the league, whatever, right? People say, hey, man, Drinkwitz, he's returns his quarterback. Luther Burden, they always got to be just an offensive juggernaut. We'll see about the defense. And it's funny because the Chiefs, wisely, are hey, we'll just spend all of our money on the defense and then just send, Tucker and Maggie out to play wide receiver for Pat, and he'll get it done. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I do think it's kind of funny that, the ballyhooed offenses maybe of Mizzou and Kansas City are being, carried at times, at least, by the defenses that get overlooked. I think that's an interesting dynamic.
And it's never been like that. It's never kind of Oklahoma has always been led by their offense, and now
under Riley and Ray Bottom.
Okay, under Riley, in the past 10 years, that's how it has been. And then you've got Venables, a defensive coach, coming back and really locking in and being I'm not letting that happen anymore. Right. We're not giving up this many points anymore.
Right. That's what's so interesting. That is the thought about OU football is, right? High flying offense, this, that, and the other. And it's funny because all of our big donors, they're very keenly aware, and they were very keenly aware when Lincoln was there. That's why some of the support was starting to dry up. Was when we win championships at Oklahoma, we do so when we're in the best conference, usually at that time, right? 2000s, early 2000s, late 90s, Big 12 was awesome. Those were it was a loaded conference. It's a lot like what the SEC is now, right? So everybody thinks somebody was when I was on post game at Ole Miss, I was man, everybody says or this is a program that's won 7 national titles and 50 conference championships and has 1 billion All-Americans and 7 Heisman and all this. And somebody was yeah, but you didn't do that in the SEC. I'm guys, the SEC hasn't been what it is now for the last 100 years. That's what's crazy to me is the mentality of, oh, well, Oklahoma would have been, whatever, nothing if they'd been playing the SEC this whole time. It's no, not the case, because the Big 8 was incredible when Nebraska, it was basically whoever won OU Nebraska won the national championship that year for the most part. And then the Big 12, when we had, obviously you guys were playing well, Colorado was playing well, Nebraska won 3 national titles in the 90s.
Texas won in 2005.
So OU played for one. They won in 2000. They played for one in 2003. Played for one in 2004. Texas won one in 2005. OU played for one in 2008. Texas played for one in 2009. And it was like, just in that time, like people forget, like, golly, like OU and Texas were the participants in half the national titles and won a couple of them during that time. So I think that is what's interesting, though, is because that tells you two things, right? The donors know that OU has always been the most successful when they've been in a great conference. That's why every donor was like, to the SEC, let's go. Like, we are sick of the Big 12. We're walking in, getting complacent, just winning with talent, not with anything else. Let's go. Let's challenge ourselves. I will always say that it's human nature to prepare better, to do everything better when the task ahead of you is taller, right? So if you guys would have been interviewing Bob Stoops instead of me for this podcast, you guys probably would have had some notes. You would have had something. I don't know. You would have both would have, I don't know, been dressed up, and I don't know what would have been happening. So I appreciate that, Maggie. But you know, you just prepare differently, right? So like, I think that's where Oklahoma's looking is, hey, look, it's human nature and it's program nature to be better, recruit more fiercely, you know, coach more fiercely, prepare better, take sleep better, take sleep more seriously, nutrition, things like that. Like, do everything at a higher level because the task is taller ahead of you. And I think the donors knew that. And then the second thing I think the donors knew is Oklahoma has never won a national championship without a defense. Like, we've never just gone and outscored anybody. Like, you look at our last national title against Florida State. Florida State came in with the number one offense in the country, led by the Heisman winner and Chris Winkie, who was like 35 at the time. So he comes in and they score 0 offensive points in the national championship game against them. Their defense outscored their offense because we had that safety, right? We've got Heupel as the national championship winning, you know, quarterback and everything like that, who was great for us that year, no doubt. But when you go back and look at it, like, that defense was insane. Yeah. And when you look at that schedule, I will put that schedule up against any of these SEC schedules. That 2000 schedule was a tougher schedule than we've had this year. And everybody talks about this being the hardest schedule in OU history. Nah, go check out that 2000 schedule. But that's why I think it's interesting because, as you said, Brent Venables bringing back defense. A lot of the donors, I think that's why a lot of them are giving him a little bit longer of a leash, because it reminds them of Bob's start. It reminds them of Switzer days. It reminds them of smash mouth defense, because those type of defensive programs are typically built on strength, toughness, discipline, that kind of thing. Offensive programs typically aren't built on those kind of things.
Yeah, some great points. Travis, thanks for hanging out with us. I know we told you we were going to keep you for 30 minutes, but you kept you for almost 50. But I appreciate you hanging out with us, giving us the OU scoop of this matchup.
Absolutely. I told Maggie, I was like, hey, are we doing an hour? She's like, no, probably like 30 minutes. So I was like, you guys are trying to censor me on election day. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. So, no, I appreciate you guys having me on. Looking forward to, I know, seeing one of you at the tailgate. Tucker, will you be at the tailgate as well?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I'll be there. Can't get around to it, but I might. You know what? Maybe we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Man, I hope to see you there, Tucker. I hope to see you there. And Maggie, I will see you Saturday as well. And then we're doing post game radio at some tailgate that I guess the university president and Drinkwitz stopped by afterwards. I don't know. So I guess that's where we're doing radio. So
my invite to that must have gotten lost.
Yeah.
Lost in the mail.
I don't know. My co-host Tyler set it up, and that guy, yeah, it's if Drinkwitz shows up and we have won the ball game, I'm just gonna hop off air and hop on my phone, because that's I'm gonna start videoing, because that interaction is gonna be fantastic. So again, thank you guys for having me on. Appreciate both of you guys.
Yes, sir. That's gonna do it for this week's edition of Mizzou That's Who. We'll catch you guys after Missouri versus Oklahoma.